What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Mark Crandall. Mark's success as an entrepreneur has made him a highly sought-after transformational life and business coach, clinical interventionist, as well as a motivational speaker. He and his carefully curated circle of transformational life and business coaches do not believe that anyone lacks motivation. What they lack instead is vision. They recognize that with vision and the proper mindset, anything is attainable. I was actually introduced to Mark by one of the keynote speakers at Growth Now Movement Live in Anthony Trucks, and honestly, we met up for coffee and ended up being a 3.5-hour conversation and turned into lunch. Mark really impressed me, not only by his success as an entrepreneur, but also his drive, his determination, and his incredible life story. And in this episode, you're going to hear him share his journey of being taken from his mom, put into foster care, taken out of foster care, his mother burning him with cigarettes, all these crazy things that you could never imagine, and it ended up landing Mark in jail. And you're going to hear the transformation of what happened in his life from jail to wanting to help individuals create their own purpose and their own passion in life and make that a business. It's absolutely wonderful, and Mark is just such an amazing guy. And since he's so incredible, I've decided to add Mark as a movement maker at Growth Now Movement Live 2020. I'm beyond excited to have him there, have him be on the stage, share his wisdom with you guys, share his journey, and then connect with you in between the margins when all the magic happens at the event. So you want to make sure you do not miss Growth Now Movement Live this year. It is going to be life-changing. Head over to gnmlive.com, grab your tickets today, use the code MARK for a discount. I cannot wait to see you guys there. Now, without further ado, I give to you newly announced movement maker, Mark Crandall. Mark, welcome to the show, man.
Justin, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, dude. It's funny. We were in each other's circles for quite some time. A number of people said, "Hey, do you know Mark Crandall?" Oh, I said I wasn't going to use your last name, and I just did already. 5 seconds in. But people are like, "Do you know Mark Crandall?" And I'm like, "I've seen him. I don't know him." And people were saying to you, "Do you know Justin Shank? You should know him." And you're like, "Oh, yeah, well, I've seen him, but I don't know him." And then, a mutual friend of ours, Anthony Trucks, who's one of the keynote speakers at Growth Now Movement Live, introduced us via text. Like all of a sudden, a text came through from Anthony, and I was like, "What is this?" And it was to you. And you had just moved like an hour and 15 minutes away from me. And it was like this cool connection, and we ended up meeting up and we just talked about this, but we met up and it ended up being like a 3.5 hour. We were supposed to get a coffee, then it turned into lunch, and it was just one of those great connections, man. And so I'm really excited for you to come on to my show and share your message with my audience because it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible, man. So why don't we start with who is Mark today, and then we'll unpack how you got there.
So who is Mark today? I don't know. I've done a lot of interviews, man, and that is not to toot my own horn. I just have, and I don't know if I've ever started with the front and worked back ever. So I appreciate that. That just knocked me off my chair a little bit. Who I am today, I have a podcast, The Purpose Chasers. I have a community that I'm really putting energy into building called The Purpose Chasers Community. I'm an author of 2 books. My most recent book, Embrace Your Past, Win Your Future. And I'm like a serial entrepreneur. I have 5 different business ventures that I'm a part of. And I just really, really love business. I love the psychology of it. I love humans. I love impacting people. Like I partnered with 2 other people to start a digital marketing company because I became so disgusted with watching people get ripped off by digital marketing companies.
Yeah.
And so that's turned into a thing that's taken off. And I'm really who I am is an individual who is creating passive income for his family so that I can be the father that I've always wanted. And that is a father that's available.
Mm. Dude, I love that. And just knowing you in the short time that we've known each other now, that's so true. Like, I've seen people give me that bullshit and I don't believe it. But you saying that it's so true. And like, you're a guy who, you are now in this world of like, I touch this and it turns to gold. Like, you're just building businesses like it's nobody's business. And obviously we know the work that goes into it, but it's all for the long-term game. We also talk about like the Purpose Chasers being the greatest name for a podcast ever. It's incredible. And then beyond that, like, even, embrace your past to say the whole thing again.
Embrace your past, win your future.
Yeah. So embrace your past, win your future. That I actually remember seeing that pop up when you came out with that book, because we've been friends on social media for a while. And I was like, that's so good. That's so good, man. But it's true. And that's exactly what you've done. And that's a story that I want to get into with you. So let's go back a little bit to who you were as a young man and really what really is the fuel to your fire today.
Yeah. So, I mean, the story, the starting point that I share is, I was 3 years old and DCY, my biological mother had almost drowned my sister in a bathtub. And my grandmother, my Oma, who's actually, her picture's right on my mantle, and I just make sure to look at it multiple times a day because she's my inspiration, which you and I got pretty deep into. I don't even know if I've ever shared that with anyone in our circles. So that was cool. And my grandmother called DCYF, and the state came in and they took custody of my sister, and my mom kidnapped me and took me to New York. And my dad wasn't in the picture. My mom was addicted to cocaine and alcohol. And, there was a lot of abuse. I was handcuffed, locked in a closet, burned with cigarettes. My first visit, that was on my first visit to my biological mother and her boyfriend. And she threw my sister down the stairs at the end of the visit. I was placed in foster care with my sister. And it was just, I really lived this really confused, angry childhood of like, just this victim mentality. I just lived in like the world had wronged me. I was going to take what should have rightfully been mine. And, 11 years old, I was killing animals and setting fires, and I was placed in institutions for 3 years. Wow. And, it was around 11 that I first, ingested any mind or mood altering substances, which you and I also talked about on our coffee date. And we didn't ingest in any. So we did, but we that coffee was good though, but I digress. And I smoked weed for the first time, and it took me out of myself. And, I became an addict. It's like, people talk about early adolescent addiction. Like, I qualified for treatment, like drug and alcohol treatment, at the age of 12. Like, I had no control. I had no control over it when I took it in, and I didn't really understand like what was going on. Right.
Well, I mean, I imagine you were doing it to escape from the reality of your life at that point.
Yeah. There was just this internal, I share it in the book and on interviews and even from stage. And the most confusing moment of my life was literally one of the biggest blessings of my life. And that was on Halloween. I was in second grade, and it was the day that my sister and I were adopted. And I remember going into class dressed up as kids do. And I forget what I was for Halloween that year. It doesn't matter. And we went into school, and my friends were like, well, why are you getting out early? And I'm like, I'm getting adopted. Well, what does that mean? I have new parents. Where are your other parents? I don't know. And it just... And of course, I didn't have those words. Who knows what I said, right? I probably lied and just brought them, whatever. But it was like one of the most confusing moments of my life. Well, what does that mean? Why do I have new parents? Why do all these other kids have their parents and I have new ones? And that was literally the story of my life until, I was released from prison. It was just this confused, angry, self-hatred. What is wrong with me? Everyone who's ever told me that they loved me has walked out or threw me away or locked me up, and just really it was just this real confusion inside of me. And the only relief that I ever got was when I ingested substances that shut my mind off.
Yeah. You talk about it ended in prison. We kind of just threw that one in there. Or I should say it all began in prison, right? But like when I look at this path and you ended up in jail, so many people end up in jail and then they continue to do what they were doing before jail once they get out. What was your pattern disrupt? What was the thing that stopped you from continuing down that path?
So this was my going to prison in 2005 was the, I don't even know, 6th or 7th incarceration. And it was a series of events, man. It wasn't just one thing. There was two or three things that I really clearly remember. That's a good question, by the way. No one's ever asked me that on an interview. They've always asked like, well, what happened in prison to get you to change? But they don't ask like, well, what was different in that moment? What was the pattern to interrupt? One of the things was my Oma, my grandmother, is the most impactful being in my life. She's the reason why I'm in America today. She sent a letter when I was in there and it said, if I see your name in the newspaper, or if I see a video of you or a picture of you on the news again, I'm disowning you. So there was that. Mm-hmm. Then my adopted brother came to visit with my adopted mother and my stepfather. And my adopted brother said, hey, Dad wanted me to let you know who's my adopted father. My adopted parents got divorced, obviously, if you can tell by all the confusion. I have to put labels because I get confused. And my adopted brother said, Dad wants you to change your name. And so he wanted me to change my last name, which is Crandall, which is his name. He gave me that when he signed the papers to adopt me.
Right.
And so that hit me really, really hard. And then the real moment for me was, I'm visualizing it as I'm talking. I remember I was 2 weeks away from going to a year-long drug and alcohol treatment center. I had been in prison. And I'm not going to talk about how great, how tough I am, because prison's just a waste of life. Like I did nothing but read books and play Skip-Bo and play cribbage. And it was just a waste. I don't even know what
Skip-Bo and cribbage is. So you got that on me.
They're card games. It's just a waste of life. And although I got pretty good at cribbage, but it was a waste of life. And I remember I went to go get my medicine, which I'd been abusing the whole time I was in there, one morning. And I woke up and I started sweating and I started crying, which is not something you want to do in prison, right? Like I'm not talking tough. You just don't want to start randomly crying in prison. And so I'm sitting on my bunk and my cellmate goes, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, dude, I'm about to get released and I haven't changed. I'm getting high. Like I got high the whole time I was in prison. Like, yes, you can get drugs in prison. They're all over the place. And it just like was in that moment. And I had this thought that came over me and and the thought was clear as day. We're walking to the chow hall that same morning. And the thought was, go to the section of the library that you've never been. And I love books. I love learning. Which is, probably why I've become as successful as I have in business. Cause I just very similar to you, like one of my favorite series that I just watched on Netflix was in Bill's Brain, which was the documentary of Bill Gates. It's brilliant. But like people are watching like whatever they're watching on Netflix. I'm watching documentaries on like the founder and like all of these different, super successful humans. And so I'm thinking about it. I'm like, what's the one section of the library I've never been? I don't understand. So we go back to the unit after we eat our crappy toast and our hard-boiled eggs and doing our chores, and the yard opens up and I go to the library and I walk in and I'm standing there like a freak. They're probably getting ready to handcuff me because they're like, he's about to wild out, whatever. And I walk to the back of the library, and you know what the one section I'd never been to was?
Which one?
It was the personal development spirituality section. No one went there. That's where they passed contraband because there was no cameras back there because no one ever went back there.
That's crazy.
And I picked up a book by the Dalai Lama and I read half of it that day. I took my sleeping pills that night, wrapped a towel around my head and attempted to meditate, also known as nodded out from my sleeping meds. But there was a moment in that meditation in which I gained a sense of relief. and I've just chased it. That was the moment. It was not me. I really don't believe that you can walk on this earth and not believe that anything superior to us exists, because I really don't. And it was in that moment that I didn't really believe that there was anything out there. But after that moment, I was like, there's got to be something else, because where did that come from?
Yeah.
Where does go to the one section of the library you've never been come from? And it changed my life.
Yeah. Out of, and like you weren't even in the library when that thought came up, or that thing came up, or the voice, or whatever you want to call it, which is absolutely crazy. And so how much longer were you in jail before you got out from that moment?
2 weeks.
Okay. So were you on this, did you get clean right there? Probably not. What did that look like?
No, I used until the day that I got out. And the day that I got out, when I showed up at the treatment center and I walked in and I met who was to become my therapist, I handed her my medication and said, I need to stop taking these. And she's like, what? I'm like, I've been abusing them the whole time I've been in there. I want to try this sober thing, even though I had tried it multiple times before, and I didn't think it was going to work, but I wanted to give it everything I had, because I had never tried rehab before. I'd never tried treatment.
Wow. And so obviously you begin this journey of this sober living, and you go through all the things. So how does somebody go from jail to now sober living? Have you been sober since then? Have there been any relapses or anything like that?
No, I haven't ingested a mind or mood altering substance since August 23rd, 2007. That's the day that I walked out of prison. I just tripped over those words, but yeah, that's the day that I walked out of prison. I came out an angry, terrified human with no self-worth at all.
Yeah. And so how do you begin this journey of obviously discovering who you really truly are versus the addict? And where do you find yourself? How do you get into entrepreneurship? Was it your only route, or what did that look like?
No, I worked jobs over and over again until I moved to Austin, Texas. Austin changed me. And it wasn't even Austin, it was the environment. And I met a man there named Nathaniel, and I overheard him talking about how he was wholesaling real estate, and he was the deposits that these individuals were putting down on the real estate was paying what he paid, and then the remainder of the money that they were paying was funding his life. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I asked him out to dinner, and he taught me, he mentored me, and now, come full circle, he's a business partner of mine.
Which is awesome. So, well, what were you doing? I mean, so you were a therapist, right?
Yeah. I was painting and drywalling. That's what I was doing out of prison, because you make decent money, and you make more money when you're sober and you do it, because everyone else is not. So I was painting and drywalling. I had 4 felonies on my record. I was on parole. I didn't think I was capable of anything other than what I was doing. And man, I don't know. I read a couple personal development books and just became obsessed with it. And, wasn't really telling people that I was reading them or studying it, and just became obsessed with human psychology, and, really started studying positive psychology, and how the only way that you can disprove your thoughts is to take action against them. And I just started to take some action, and I was going to school for human services at the time to get my bachelor's degree. And I wanted to break out into the field of human services, but everyone that I had talked to told me that I would never be possible. It wouldn't be possible with my record. And one of these books I was reading said to find a mentor, and I didn't know what that meant. And it, other than it was somebody who had what you wanted. Right. And so I went to school that week, and I walked up to my professor, and his name was Marty. And I said, hey, will you mentor me? He's like, what does that mean? I was like, I don't know. I want to buy you lunch. He's like, you're not buying. He goes, you're not buying
in the book.
Yeah, that's what it said. I didn't tell him that, but that's what it said. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I need guidance, and this is who I am. And I mean, you met with me. I show up wholehearted. I'm not I really pride myself in not being some flaky individual who's going to blow smoke up your ass. And we sit down and we meet, and I was like, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is what I've been called to do in life, and da, 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 da. And he's like, let me get you an interview. got me an interview. I got hired by a facility, Child and Family Services, and I started a position as a runaway and homeless youth social worker. And it was, everything changed for me. And I don't want to lead your interview for you, so stop me if you will.
Yeah.
Everything changed for me. I was working at that facility and I was just really unfulfilled. I get bored pretty easy. If I'm not challenged and I'm not, really like taking action to overcome an obstacle of some kind, I get bored. And when I get bored, I start screwing off and I troll Facebook and play games and play Call of Duty or whatever it is. And so I'm getting bored at this job, and I've been there like 5 or 6 years, and a job opens up at the state level. And this time I'm off parole and all of that. But everyone says like, the state's never going to hire you, man. You have like a criminal record. Like, you're lucky you got this position, da, 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 da. And at this time, like, I'm neck deep in personal development. Like, I'm all in, I'm studying people. I'm really in, and I applied, and I can write. So I wrote this, Robert Frost-esque cover letter. And it was like, I got an interview, nailed the first interview. Everyone was like, I can't believe you're getting a second interview. Nailed the second interview. And my mentor said at the end of the interview, you got to let them know, because it's the state. And I put my name on the line for you to get this job. Like, you got to let them know that you have felonies. I was like, okay. At the end of the interview, they said, do you have anything you need to tell us? And I was like, yeah, I have 4 felonies. I can give you more character references. Then I can stack up character references that won't make those felonies look good. Like, they'll make them not existent. And so I got hired. That's not even when it all changed for me, though. When it all changed for me was the Union Leader, which was this small paper, printed an article, or they wanted to print an article about me, because somebody got pissed that I got hired over their girlfriend for this facility. So felon gets hired over like upstanding citizen, right? You can imagine the article. And my mentor said, you can't do the interview. Like, Maggie Bishop, who's the woman who oversaw the facility, she was one level below the governor of New Hampshire. She called me. I got on a call with her. She's like, Mark, we respect you. We back you. We want you at this facility. You do amazing work. Da, 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 da. You cannot do that interview. Like, from a PR standpoint, you can't do it. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So my mentor says, if you get a call on Friday night, know that they are printing that article in the Sunday morning paper, because he had been in the paper. Like, he was in a high position. Sure enough, Friday night, I got a call, and I was like, I really, really want to do this interview, but I'm told that I can't do it. And I'm thinking, like, I'm going to shine some light for those who don't think that there's any light at the end of the tunnel. And you just dropped an Instagram post about shining light, or what did you say?
Yeah, on the story, something about like, I stopped waiting for the light and decided to light that bitch up myself, or something like that.
Yeah. I wasn't going to swear. I knew what it said, but I wanted to see if you were going to drop it on your own show. And I decided to light that bitch up. And so the article came out, and Saturday night I'm, at home with my wife, and it hits online, because newspapers are kind of a dead thing, but newspaper, like, the article would hit the internet and then it would get printed. And so they'd give you a preview. So hopefully you'd go buy the paper, and the preview was just like, I was mortified. I was like, my life's over. Everyone's going to find out. And this time I'm in grad school to get my MSW, Master's in Social Work, for those of you who don't know the acronyms. And I go to bed that night. I don't sleep well. Sunday morning comes. I go to the store first thing in the morning, and I get the paper and I read the article, and I became super engulfed in fear. And I paused, and I said a little prayer, and I got really present. I read it again, and I started crying with gratitude. And I drove home, and my wife goes, "How is the article?" And I was like, "It was amazing. It's amazing. Read it." And she just looked at me after she read it, and she just gave me this look. And I'm like, "Babe, do you know how many me's are out there? Do you know how many people have things from their past or whatever it may be, or, poor upbringings, and they're using that as an excuse to not do what they've been called to do on this earth? Like, look at that." She's like, "Oh, wow." That article set me on fire. And I know what they were trying to do, because the headline read, and I cannot find it. So if there's anyone in Justin's audience that knows how to beat out my SEO that I've been building since I've been in business, Like I'm really trying to find this article to use it in my keynotes, but the heading was Convicted Burglar Counsels Youth. And I'll give you more info for those of you who may have some access to it. It was in Manchester, New Hampshire, and it was a newspaper called The Union Leader. It set me on fire, Justin. And it was from that moment that I realized that the only thing that can prevent us as humans from achieving what we want to achieve are the thoughts that we tell ourselves.
That's huge.
I spoken at the Senate. Like I spoke in the Senate on a bill called Check the Box, which was if you're a convicted felon, you have to check that on a box for a job application.
Right.
I presented, and at the end of my presentation, I said, and by the way, my name is Mark Crandall. I'm a convicted felon, and the New Hampshire State Prison rehabilitated me, and I thank you. And They just were like, what? But like, there's nothing that we can't do. And so that's when it,
dude, that's amazing too, because I think, like you said, the world will try and put these things on you because of choices that you've made in the past. And the end of the day is you're not who you are in the past. Like there's another post that I've shared out in the past, talking about how, like, if you knew me a year ago, don't think you know me now. My growth game is strong, something like that. And so I look at that and I go, that's so true. I'm not who I was a year ago, let alone 10 years ago, let alone the choices people make to put them in certain situations. And like the fact that you're able to communicate that to the world, not only by proof, but also then verbally doing it, like you're a catalyst for this whole entire thing, which I absolutely love. Not to mention you've gone on to grow businesses and became very successful doing that. And so now you're leading a charge for the people who are afraid to step into their light. Let's talk about that for a second. What is it about you pushing these 9-to-5ers into them to chase their purpose? Where did that even come from? Because that has nothing to do with your history.
Yeah. So I plug this man, and I'll continue to plug him until the universe just aligns our paths. But a man named David Peltzer wrote a book called A Child Called It. And my adoptive mother sent me that when I was in county jail the first time. And I remember reading that man's book, and I remember thinking, one day I'm going to do what he does. One day I'm going to share my story with the world, and I'm going to shine light for those who don't think that there's light. I'm going to set that bitch on fire, right? Like as you said.
Yeah.
And that was, when I was 18 years old, I read his book, and that's when it really opened up for me. And when did I know that I was called for it? Here's really what happened for me. And I don't know, maybe you edit this out, or maybe I'm going to ruffle some feathers, so to speak. This is what when it happened for me. I was working as a therapist in Austin, which is why we moved there. And I just remember I learned about like all these influencers, and I started following all these people that were in Austin and all over the world. And bro, they were so fake.
Mm-hmm.
They were so fake. And I just remember, like, I'm tearing up even thinking about it. I've never shared this on an interview. And I just remember going, dude, like, you shared on Purpose Chasers when I interviewed you. Like, you're so selfish. You're so selfish. Make $100,000. I'll make 6 figures online now. I hate that phrase, 6 figures. There's 999,999 numbers in 6 figures. Yeah. Like you literally go from 100,000 to 1 million. Stop saying 6 figures. Did you make 100,000? Like it just, sorry. I get
you're good, man.
But I remember like just watching all these influencers, and I'm just, and then what happened for me, and I'm not going to drop the event. I volunteered an event to get in some circles to just really start to network at a higher level. And man, I couldn't stand to be around these people. I couldn't stand to be around them. It's this certain group that I was following them. And that's when it all shifted for me. That's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to do something. And it wasn't called Purpose Chasers back then. And I just started talking, and I pulled a group together of the people that I was coaching at the time. And that's when it started. And I just believe that the ultimate influencer is an individual that's not scared to also disclose their limiting beliefs and where they're struggling in life. And I don't follow many people online, man. I really just don't.
So I think we talked about this when we grabbed coffee. I talked about an influencer who wrote a book and it was literally about vulnerability and all these things. And then find out he's living this huge lie, cheated on his girlfriend, all this stuff. And I put a post up on social media about, are you climbing a ladder? Or are you building a mountain? When you think about a mountain, it's super sturdy on the bottom and you slowly climb and you climb your way up, but it's sturdy. If you're standing on a ladder that's just standing there, you are on thin ice, man. And so what I found out is these influencers, and I put in quotes because I hate that term. But you see these influencers who are literally an inch deep and a mile wide. Like there's really no impact other than what's affecting them. All they care about is themselves. Now there's a lot of people following them because they may have the money that backing them. They might be good looking. They might be whatever. And they have that. But then there's people, and I'd like to put myself in this and you and a number of other people that are, they go real deep. And it's about being open and honest with what we're going through and things that we just overcame and all of these things, right? And I just shared about how, I didn't talk to my dad for 7.5 years. And it was something that until probably about a year and a half ago, we weren't totally great. Now we're great, but it took work, right? And so it's just about sharing that journey. And so I love the fact that your eyes got open to this and the truth behind all of it, because the world needs people like you in order to go out there and really kind of tell the truth, right? So what is now driving you to continue to grow this purpose chasers thing? Like, what is it about this idea that you should be the catalyst for all of this for these 9-to-5ers?
Yeah, it's shifted a little bit because I don't know if I'm the catalyst. I just believe that my story is it's a pretty brutal one, right? It's like, as far as like stories go and things that happen to people to, create a platform for them to be a motivational speaker or an author or whatever.
Yeah.
But man, since having my son, and I've been sitting with this a lot, Justin, I really want nothing more than for that little guy to see in me that nothing is impossible in life. And, I don't want, like, when he gets to the point where he's ready to make moves, I have college money or I have startup money, right? So there's going to be a chunk of money for him set aside, and you can go to college or you can have this to invest in a startup. What if I lose it all?
Point him to this episode and I'm going to tell him, don't go to college. So anyway, go ahead. Yeah,
seriously. And I don't know, man. I very much like you, I down myself, right? Like I know how powerful of a human you are, and you recognize that in me, and other people recognize it in me, but I don't sometimes recognize it in me. And I'm really skilled at coaching and empowering people to move past their limiting beliefs. And I'm just doing it. I don't think I'm going to be a catalyst for all 9-to-5ers. Right. I just truly don't believe that. But if I can empower 5 people this year to take actions and follow their dreams, I did my job, man.
Yeah, dude, I love all of that stuff, man. And obviously you're somebody who has now, built 5 businesses. There's massive success in all that you do. Your podcast is blowing up. Your community is super engaged. So my question for you is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Another good question. What is my definition of success? And this is something I've been sitting with a lot since having little Hammy, little Mark, my son, 6 months now at the time of this recording, changed everything for me. So what I would say to you is something that I've been sitting with a lot. I don't think there's a definition for success outside of comparing yourself to other people. I don't believe you can truly define success without comparing myself. Well, when I get the downloads Justin has on his podcast, then I'll make it. And what I've experienced, and I'm guessing you've experienced the same thing, is even when I get that thing, there's going to be another thing. So really, really what I'm striving for right now, not to do the wordplay game, is to create the financial security and the passive income for myself and my family. So when little man comes down the stairs at 3, 4, 5 years old and goes, "Daddy, come play with me," I don't have to say, "No, Daddy's got 65 emails to send."
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Yeah. Dude, I love that, man. And I know that that's stuff that you're living every single day, and you're truly building this incredible thing. And, after sitting and meeting with you for 3 hours or whatever it was the other week, there was something special about the way in which you deliver your message and the way in which you're helping people. And so I'm going to take this moment now to let everybody know that's listening that Mark will be a part of Growth Now Movement Live as a movement maker, to be there to give knowledge, to impact, to connect. And so I encourage all of you to make sure you take advantage of the opportunity. Here's the thing. We talk about events all the time. We talk about how there's so many of them. You go and you get super motivated at them. You and I have talked about this, Mark. You get motivated and then you're dead 2 days later, or like there's nonsense from the stage. The thing about Growth and Movement Live is that we truly teach, or my speakers and my movement makers truly teach, number one. Number two, it's the opportunity to connect. I know in my life, the fact that I have this podcast has given me the opportunity to connect with some of the most incredible people in the world. However you want to look at that, and people like you and Anthony Trucks, who introduced us, and all the people that are involved in these events year over year for me. That's what the catalyst and the game changer for me was. It was about the relationships with the people who support, who love, who can teach, who can mentor, who can hold you accountable, who have already done the things that you want to do. That's the game changer. So that's why Mark is coming and being a part of the event, because I want him there in order for you guys to connect to him. So that's the official announcement. We'll also do some social media when all this comes out too. But dude, I just want to say I'm super excited for you to be a part of this event. And thank you so much for agreeing and coming along for the ride.
You know what, man? Since our meeting, it's already in my calendar. Like, it's super excited. And here's why I'm excited. So for any of your listeners that are on the fence, like, oh, well, another event, or that's going to cost a lot of money, or whatever it is, which your event is super underpriced, right? Like I spent 75 grand last year on events. Crazy. And the reason why I'm so excited is the heart-centered environment that you're building at this event. Like, I know that within the realm of that environment, I'm not going to get a podcast guest out of it. Like, I may make the next level friendships in my life. Like, I don't view you as like a one and done. I'm going to go on his podcast, he's going to come on mine. Like, I view you as like, I'm going to nurture this thing and see what this turns into. And so I'm really, really excited. And another plug, I flew to San Diego. Anthony's one of my mentors. He shut that bitch down. Like, I'm telling you, the only person that I believe outspoke him on stage was Rachel Hollis. And I don't even know if she's human. Like, she spoke and I was like, she's not human. But yeah. Anthony, if you need one reason to come, he's it. But I think the thing that gets me most excited about this event, Justin, is just being around other heart-centered individuals that are really seeking to bring value. I'm pumped to be there and get connected to your community and literally give all I got.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. Dude, this conversation has been amazing. So let's get to the important stuff. How do people find you? How do they get a hold of you? What's all that good stuff so they can get to know you a little bit more before the event?
Yeah. So head over and subscribe to the Purpose Chasers podcast. That is my heart. I don't have sponsorships for that podcast. I do it. I write content for my people, for individuals that are seeking to do more in life. And I love it. That's my baby. And if you go subscribe there, you can see everything else I do.
Dude, I love it, man. That was really smooth, that simple plug of the podcast. I think that's a good thing.
That was a tip from you.
I know. That's why I said it. No, dude, but this has been phenomenal. And I wrap up every single interview with the same question. And since this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement, my question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
In my life, what has been my biggest moment of growth? I would say this. Outside, obviously, you know my story, so I've had large moments of growth, but I would say in my business realm, I booked what I considered a pretty high level guest on the Purpose Chasers. And I reached out to a friend of mine because I was super excited. I reached out to a few people, and this friend said, "Hey, could you have time for a call?" And I said, yes. And I got on a call with this person, and this person shared with me that individual had accusations that were kind of behind the curtains of sexually assaulting women in these communities. And I reached back out to him and canceled the interview. Then I stopped recording Purpose Chasers. That was season 1, the end of season 1. In that moment, I really reflected on why am I actually doing this? Who is my audience? And that's why, I mean, you just came on the podcast. I like to get whoever I'm interviewing in the mind frame of my 9-to-5 individual that wants to take action and be more. I would say, as far as like this last year, that has been my biggest moment of growth. I mean, outside of my son being born, I mean, it just changed my life too. But yeah, I got a lot of moments of growth, but that's my most recent one.
Dude, that's awesome, man. This conversation has been phenomenal. I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing, of course, with my audience. But beyond that, just thank you so much for being you, being real, being honest, and being super open about your story that a lot of people wouldn't be open about, because that's what it's all about, right? It's all about sharing who we are with the world in hopes that we can affect 1 or 2 lives in a positive way going forward, man. And you're living proof of that, dude. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.